All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar presented by Tools for Life, Georgia's Assistive Technology Act program. This webinar is titled The Artificial Intelligence Revolution: Are People with Disabilities Being Left Behind? We are so glad to have everyone join us. If you have any questions during the webinar, please utilize the question and answer or Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar. We will be happy to look at those and read them and see how we can answer to the best of our ability. Just so everyone is aware, this webinar is being recorded for future access. If you would like the link to the recording, it will be sent out within the next week or so once we get it posted on the Tools for Life website. Also, we are utilizing live captions during today's webinar. I want to thank Adela, who is our live captionist today. So thank you so much, Adela. If you are not able to see the captions, please let me know and we will gladly ensure that you have a link to the live caption stream text player. Let's see, I'm going to introduce our wonderful presenters today. We have Johan Rempel, who is the ICT and UX Quality Assurance Manager at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, and John Tolles, who is our Digital Accessibility Specialist, also within the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. Our learning objectives today, we want to ensure that our attendees gain a basic understanding of large language models used by artificial intelligence, or AI. We want our learners to know the benefits and challenges of AI for people with disabilities, as well as learn how the barriers for people with disabilities can be addressed. Okay, so just to make sure everyone is on the same page, if you are not familiar with the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, we are a center within Georgia Tech, and we provide a lot of different services to post-secondary students as well as beyond in the workplace and so forth. We have a department focused on ongoing disability-related research. We also provide ICT and UX accessibility consulting, Braille services, both print and electronic. We do provide captioning and described audio services, not just for videos, but also for live environments. We have professional e-text producers, and these can come into many formats. And then we also have a certified assistive technology team, which is Tools for Life. And again, that is Georgia's Assistive Technology Act program. A little bit more about Tools for Life. Again, the AT Act program for the state of Georgia. Every state and U.S. territory has an Assistive Technology Act program. As we are federally mandated, we are all tasked with the same state level services as well as leadership services. These include demonstrations of assistive technology, equipment lending, state financing, and AT reuse. Also public awareness, technical assistance, and training and education like today's webinar. We are here to ensure that people with disabilities at all ages and all disabilities have the opportunity to gain access to and acquisition of assistive technology devices and services so they can live, learn, work, and play independently in the communities of their choice. As far as today's agenda, we are going to kind of go through this very quickly as much as we can. We have a lot of information to pack into this hour. We're going to look at the overview of the large language models used by AI and also defining what it is to be a person with a disability. We're going to look at the benefits of artificial intelligence for people with disabilities, existing challenges that people with disabilities can face with AI, and also looking at removing those barriers. We will try to get to everyone's questions at the end, but if not, please know that we will be reaching out to those who asked questions that we did not get to. We will reach out to you guys directly. So on that note, I am going to pass it over to Johan and John to get our webinar started.
Thank you, Tori. I'm John Tolles. I'm going to talk a little bit about AI to start with. So to start off, what is AI and machine learning? Go to the next slide. So AI and machine learning, they're commonly used interchangeably, but the best definition that is probably easiest to understand is that AI is the software that can emulate human thought and perform tasks using human input, while machine learning is one of many mechanisms used by AI to analyze data. So AI is the whole, and machine learning is just a portion of the process. So there's an image here of some nuts and bolts laying on a table, and that's kind of the way you would think about it. AI is the machine. Machine learning is just the nuts and bolts that make the machine work. Next slide. But AI is actually older than you think. Artificial intelligence was an early goal for computer science all the way back in the 1950s. Then it was defined basically as machine learning, or a computer that can learn from experience. Some of the early advancements included programs designed to play games like checkers and chess, and then decision-making programs that use probability to reach conclusions. But the main drawback to these programs is that none of them were able to outperform humans at these tasks. Next slide. And just so everyone is on the same page, we want to also define some of the terms that you might have heard being thrown around a lot. So an algorithm is a set of instructions intended to yield a specific output from a model. So think of it as the way the model gets its information is the algorithm. So the model itself is the part of the neural network that humans interact with. So when you're asking questions of an AI system, Copilot, a ChatGPT, you're actually interacting with the model, not the algorithm or anything like that. It's the model that you're actually interacting with. Neural network is a computer system modeled on the human brain. A large language model is a neural network trained to predict likely text outputs from human language inputs. So that ChatGPT basically is a large language model. Computer vision is a neural network trained to analyze images and videos. Generative AI is an entire set of algorithms, really, and models designed to create content such as text, images, audio, video. So things like ChatGPT. You may have also heard of DALL-E that you use to create images. And then reinforced learning from human feedback. That's a method of training a neural network where humans analyze the network's output to improve its future iterations. So it's the network creating outputs and humans analyzing that output to determine the good output versus the bad output, and reinforcing the good output. Next slide. So some of the recent advancements in AI, so starting around 2010, this is considered the deep learning era. It's when training computation speeds doubled approximately every 6 months, which is more than triple the previous pace. So training computation being how fast can you put model through, or put data through an algorithm to generate a model. AI greatly expanded between 2012 and 2017 as techniques began to approach to create approaching human levels. Sorry, that threw me off there, but it basically is between 2012 and 2017 is when models began to be able to create human level outputs. So then things started to look more and more like what was created by humans. So between 2020 and 2022, large language models and stable diffusion being image generation led to successful generative AI systems. So it really hasn't been that long so that these systems have been around, and it's already starting to feel like they're everywhere. But in the period since 2020, the expanded funding, research, and marketing of AI has created an AI boom. That's the systems can now create images and text that closely resembles human creations. Next slide. So the parts of a large language model. So you'll hear a lot about like what the various components and functions are, and this is how we want to explain that. It's not all encompassing, but it's the breakdown that we feel is important. So the training data is information categorized by human beings so that it can be usable by the algorithm. So think of all of the stuff on the internet. It's not just being fed directly into the model. It's being categorized and have various aspects of it analyzed and tagged up by human beings so that it's digestible in the way that the algorithm expects it to be. The algorithm itself are the instructions created by human beings that the neural network uses to interpret training data. And then the model is the result of running the algorithm or running the training data through the algorithm. That is the part of the system that people interact with when they're actually using it. And then all of these sort of come into a circular pattern. So you start with the training data, but you don't really, you probably actually started with the algorithm. Sometimes you might even have started with a model from an old system. They're circular, sort of one feeds the other, and it creates a cyclical system. Next slide. So when you're interacting with a large language model, what you're giving it are prompts. So prompts are your instructions to the model. It can be any type of media. Mostly we're used to interacting with through text, but you can create systems that accept images or video as input. And prompts can be detailed or general, depending on what you're attempting. So you might start off with a very generalized prompt, just ask it a question. But then as you get more comfortable using the system, you can sort of learn the quirks and start tailoring your prompts to the way the system works. And in that way, you can actually think of prompts as being programs that are written in natural language versus computer code. Next slide. So the strengths and risks of AI, the strengths being that it can create large amounts of text or image very quickly. It can closely resemble the writing or the images created by human beings. And the big advantage being that it can actually interpret conversational language. You can talk to ChatGPT the way you would talk to a person, and generally ChatGPT understands what you're saying. But some of the risks are biases. It inherits the bias from the training data. So if you feed it biased data, it's going to give you biased output. It's also going to create hallucinations or have what's being called hallucinations sometimes. It's just nonsense due to false patterns. So there's several famous examples, but the one I always point to is like a sports writer who's trying to get an earlier version of ChatGPT. I think it was GPT-3 to summarize a lot of sports data for it and create like coherent articles around the data that it was being asked to analyze. And then about halfway through, it starts writing about unicorns, and it won't stop writing about unicorns. And sycophancy is also another issue, which are lies to meet user biases. So ChatGPT wants to give you an answer, no matter it's trained to. That's the whole point of it, is to give you an answer, and because of that, it tends to give you answers that you're already expecting to get sometimes in many situations. And sometimes it's not always right. If you ask it to write about a particular subject, it'll write about that subject, whether or not it has any data available for that subject or not. A big example being a set of French researchers who were asking it to write about a famous French chemist who never actually existed, but it created biographies and Wikipedia articles about this French chemist, even though the person never actually existed, because all the system is doing is creating text based on an input. And then these systems also lack context. How does, how the question being, how does an AI understand context? it's not able to actually analyze anything that is being input into it or output from it in the larger sense. It's just what word is most likely to follow this word after this particular prompt. So you lose the larger context of cultural data that we all just sort of absorb as we go about our days. Next slide. So where are you using AI today? So there are lots of places where you're actually using AI and you may not even realize it. So if you're used to using speech to text, things like voicemail transcription, speech to text software, things like that, that most of those are AI-driven systems now. Maps and navigation, so like Waze, Google Maps, traffic prediction, things like that. Biometric authentication, so your facial and fingerprint recognition, lots of it being used in airport security. Grammar and spelling correction, so I think like Grammarly, Microsoft Word even is more AI based now. And search and recommendation engines, so like your Google search is really like Google's always kind of been an AI because it's an algorithm that's based off of a lot of research that Google's done about how to get something to understand or how to get a computer to understand human speech. Streaming services, recommendation algorithms, shopping, advertising, things like that. And then digital assistants, we're sort of all used to the ALEXA and I don't want to say it in case I'm going to activate anybody's systems that they might have in their offices, but things like that. Next slide. And so the marketing of generative AI, so it's generally marketed as content creation, media alternative text creation, artwork, data analysis. All of these are the marketed benefits of AI. But when you're using AI systems, you could also be creating plagiarism or lie generation tools. So we talked about how AI can lie to you, the fact that the data that it's trained on comes from the internet generally. It could also be someone else's copyrighted work. So image description, the image, when it's describing an image, it may not be accurate. It could be missing out on completely on large parts of the context of the image or large portions of the image that it for some reason doesn't think they're important. And then the same as with using someone's copyrighted text work, it could also be using someone's copyrighted art. And then of course, biases. It's always going to, the data that you feed it are going to contain biases, and then those biases are going to be translated into the output from the model. Next slide. And I'm going to pass it off here to Johan, and he's going to talk about defining people with disabilities.
Thank you, John. Oh, okay. John just covered a wide swath of information in a very condensed way. So I don't know how you pulled that off, John, but that was impressive. So we're going to talk about people with disabilities and AI and the benefits and some disadvantages thereof. But first off, regarding people with disabilities in general, just curious, and Tori, maybe you can monitor the Q&A. How many adults in the United States do you think have a disability? 1 in 4, 1 in 6, 1 in 8, or 1 in 10? If you can just put your answer in the Q&A there, and then we'll give people just a moment or two, and then Tori can read those out. Give people about 5 more seconds.
Sure. We've got a few people saying 1 in 6. We've got one person who says, according to the CDC, 1 in 4. A couple more, 1 in 6, and another 1 in 4.
All right, we have some subject matter experts on the call here, I can tell. So let's go to the next slide. All right, according to the CDC, more than 1 in 4 adults in the US are living with a disability. And that statistic was shocking to me the first time I heard it. We very often can think of people with disabilities as sort of a boxed in finite population. And it's so much more complex than that. And this, specific to AI, every one of these could impact their ability or lack thereof of leveraging AI. So we're looking at, and again, these are definitions by the CDC: mobility, serious difficulty walking or climbing stairs; cognition, serious difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions; lack of independent living, difficulty doing errands alone; deaf or have serious difficulty hearing; and vision. This could be disability with blindness or serious difficulty seeing even when wearing glasses. And then lack of self-care, difficulty dressing or bathing independently. Again, these are CDC descriptions of people with disabilities. Let's go to the next slide. And this is a little more generic, but this is according to the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative, which is international. So they broaden these quite a bit to physical disabilities, cognitive learning and neurological, visual, auditory, and speech. And the reason why I think this is important to bring up is very often when we think of people with disabilities, we might automatically think blindness. We might automatically think a person in a wheelchair, and it's so much broader than that. Next slide. So disabilities impact all of us, whether we experience a situational, temporary, or permanent disability. Situational could be, us simply being out on a bright sunny day and the amount of glare washing over our display, our computer, laptop. I'm sure we've all been in this situation, our smartphone. That could be a situational disability. Temporary could be an injured arm, for instance, an injured foot, maybe cataracts, that a person is awaiting cataract surgery, or permanent. Someone may be born with a disability or acquired it at a later age, and it's irreversible. So the truth of the matter is 100% of us will have one or more disabilities at some point in our lives if we live long enough. It could be reduced hearing, reduced vision, compromised physical dexterity, for instance. So this really is going to likely impact all of us at some point in our lives, living with a disability. And creating accessible and inclusive products and services benefits everybody, right? So when you think of moving beyond the bell curve, that really benefits the entire population. Not considering the needs of people with disabilities in products and services disenfranchises more than a quarter of the population, as we saw with that CDC statistic. Next slide. So the benefits of AI for people with disabilities, as John mentioned, there's a lot of buzz around AI, and there are tremendous benefits that are available. Let's go to the next slide here and point out some of them. So John mentioned with the general population, some of these like autocomplete, spam filters, personalized streaming recommendations, driving directions. We don't think of those as necessarily exclusively benefiting people with disabilities. They benefit everyone. But a lot of these prevent additional cognitive load. They make it so much more efficient and provide access that may not be there previously. Assistive technology powered by AI, such as SARI, ALEXA. I have both of these devices nearby, or Google Now, right? Tremendous AI potential with those devices, and definitely considered assistive technology for people with disabilities. Google has put out an app called Paratron. It allows individuals with speech impairments to translate speech patterns into fluent conversations. Google's Live Transcribe app uses AI to transcribe speech in real time for the deaf and hard of hearing population. And then we are all likely familiar with the AI captions within MS Teams, Otter AI, Zoom, just to name a few. And then Microsoft's Seeing AI app for people with vision loss. This is very powerful. What it can do is interpret images in a person's environment that they may take from their smartphone, for instance, and within a very short amount of time, translate that image into text. WheelMap is another very powerful app that uses AI to crowdsource accessibility information about public spaces and their accessibility or lack thereof. For example, do they have a wheelchair access to their establishment, for instance? Next slide. So that was a very, very short list. Here's another, this recently was pushed out, Chat GPT being paired with Read Aloud. So this feature audibly communicates its replies to users. It removes the need for users to manually input their inquiries, enabling smooth conversational engagement. And it also recognizes multiple language. Very, very powerful tool. So for someone with a physical disability, for instance, lack of limited mobility skills, they are not required to input this information necessarily using a keyboard or peripheral device. It can, the text to speech and speech to text can be very, very powerful here. Next slide. And there's a lot of buzz here. We all know that corporate America is really, a lot of these companies are moving very, very quickly into AI, really to stay competitive. And Microsoft is no exception. They've introduced the Copilot keyboard. So the keyboard is an additional key on some newer Microsoft QWERTY keyboards introduced in recent versions of Windows 11. It interfaces with Microsoft's AI-powered productivity tool that includes conversational chat interface, text generation, and summarization, image creation, code writing, dynamic evolution. So pretty powerful tools right at a person's fingertip, literally on the keyboard now. Next slide. So the challenges of AI for people with disabilities, I think we need to see both sides of the coin here as far as the pros and cons. Next slide. So frequent accessibility issues with AI-related interfaces. This is a fairly short list, but it gives a pretty good example of how AI interfaces really need to take into account people with disabilities. Basic aspects of accessibility within the various AI interface applications are often overlooked. These can include, but not limited to, color contrast, keyboard access, programmatic and visible focus, correct tab order for people who might be using something other than maybe a point and click mouse, and then lack of effective labeling of elements and headings. Next slide. So there's a lot of information here on this page. This is an actual screenshot of Chat GPT very recently. And what I did is just a very high level accessibility review of this page. This was taken from my desktop. And the text, which I'll read some of here in black and gray, is what's on Chat GPT. The bright red arrows and the red text are comments that I've drawn from here related to accessibility. So the first issue here is that the entire top third of the web page for Chat GPT on the desktop contains blank space. So for someone with field loss or someone who's using screen magnification, they may very easily have their viewport at the top of the page and think there's actually nothing there. So it's highly unusual to have the top third of the page blank. It's just not very user-friendly. And then the big bold question we have staring at us, how can I help you today? That's actually not even coded as a heading. So for a screen reader accessing the headings on the page, they would miss that entirely. Some of the suggested topics, for example, explain airplane turbulence to someone who has never flown before. Very irregular. The first line of this explain airplane turbulence is coded as a heading. And then the continued sentence is light gray, which actually fails color contrast according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So that light gray text for someone who's colorblind or low vision, that may be really problematic. So I'm not trying to discredit ChatGPT here. I'm just highlighting that even within some of these interfaces, accessibility needs to be foremost. It needs to be considered. So because AI itself does not intuitively incorporate accessibility. The very bottom here, we have message chat GPT. So that's a placeholder text. So as soon as you type, that entirely disappears. Someone with cognitive disabilities, for instance, may need to review what that actual edit field is, and they wouldn't have that opportunity. Then on the far right bottom is an up arrow, which is not very intuitive. It's also very light. So the up arrow does not intuitively represent the send button on this as well. Also, for someone who's low vision or colorblind, they may not even recognize that as an up arrow. So high level overview of some accessibility issues, just as an example that we need to be mindful of and advocate for people with disabilities to ensure that we are, we have a level playing field here when we're leveraging AI services. Next slide. So AI generated alternative text. Many of you are probably aware of this, that Microsoft Office 365 generates alternative text for pictures. Depending on the version, it may or may not be set to the default. There are many other applications, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, that use that generate alt text automatically. Next slide. So there are some inherent challenges to automated alt text with images, and what AI doesn't do an especially good job with is to understand context. On this slide, we have a picture of bright yellow tulips on the right, and this is just a few examples of how context is so important. So this might just be an image on a website. So the alternative text would be yellow tulips blooming in the spring. If this was a horticulture class online, you may want to be very specific. Tulipa jesneriana, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If this is an image as a link that represents an organization, it could be Tulip Society of America. If this is simply decorative and a bit of eye candy, this could have the null attribute where a screen reader wouldn't even need to pick it up, reduce that cognitive load and auditory fatigue, right? So this is where AI really does not do an especially good job is getting the context. Who's the target audience? How is this information being leveraged? Next slide. So this is a recent picture that I grabbed from the internet. And it's an image of a gentleman going up a ramp, and he is using a knee walker. And for the majority of people who can see this picture and look at it and understand its context, that would be pretty obvious what I just said. But this is this is how the AI generated text interpreted it. A person riding a bicycle. Okay, so we can laugh at this, it's quite comical, but if we're actually conveying meaningful information with images and relying on AI to do that, we would really need to QC that before we accept some of the AI generated descriptions. So it fails to differentiate a knee walker from a bicycle. It inaccurately applies the verb riding. It does not identify the accessible ramp at all. And no information is provided on how the ramp allows this person access to the building. So once again, AI is very powerful and can be very beneficial to people with disabilities. But I think we just, as humans, we need to QC this and make sure that it's actually accurate. Because the risk here is that AI will generate an alt text. And when you go through and do the accessibility check, it will flag it as, yes, this image has an alt text, but is that image actually, is the alt text actually descriptive of the image itself? Next slide. Okay, so AI generated captions. The benefits here for captions are it can produce content quickly, thereby producing large volumes of product descriptions, news stories, or other types of content that require little personalization. The barriers to AI generated captions are that there's confidence intervals. What this is AI assumes the next word or words if misspoken or when sound interference occurs, which is then included in the transcript as if it was actually spoken. And human inarticulates, AI tends to include every utterance, for example, like, so, apparently, etc., even when it's not valuable or necessary in the context of information shared. Next slide. So how and when to use AI-generated captions? As a rule of thumb, when AI-generated captions gets things wrong, it will often get things very, very wrong. AI captions best used for low-stakes multimedia and meetings not pertaining to critical information sharing. And then when it relates to healthcare, education, or employment, it must be accurate. So, if a person's health is impacted, or their grades in school, or specific requirements in their job, that really is critical. And just relying on AI alone is really not fair to the individual who's accessing that information. Here's an example. This was fairly recent. This was the national anthem generated by AI during a Portland basketball game in 2023. The national anthem, some of you will be able to piece some of this together. Or the right, period, heart tweet, wow, exclamation mark. Touched were so gallantly streaming me. It's right, period. The bombs, period. First evening, period. Gave proof, period. Through the night, period. Right that our flag was still there, period. So again, this is comical, but if this is critical information, which it isn't, but if this was critical information that was being shared regarding someone's health or education or employment, this would be completely unacceptable. Next slide. So trained AI models exhibit learned disability bias. This is actually a research undergone by Penn State College of Information Sciences and Technology on AI and disability bias. So explicit bias was detected against people with disabilities. AI tools analyzed often contain biases against persons with disabilities. Statements referring to people with disabilities received significantly more negative and toxic scores than statements from other control categories. And then tools often classified statements as negative or toxic simply by the presence of terms such as blind. At the end of this presentation, we have a whole bunch of resources that you'll be able to follow up on. And this is one of those resources if you actually want to read the study and look at it in more detail. Next slide. So policies and practices around AI. This is a little broader than just related to people with disabilities. This is closely tied to ethics as well. And there's a number of different policies. I'm going to start off more locally and statewide here and then broaden it. So the Georgia Technology Authority, which is kind of the center of the spoke of IT within Georgia for state agencies, they've established 5 guiding principles governing the design, implementation, and utilization of automated systems. These include implement responsible systems, number 1. Number 2, ensure ethical and fair use of automated decisions. Number 3, maintain data quality and privacy. Number 4, keep AI usage transparent. And number 5, keep human involvement at the center. Next slide. So ada.gov has also put out some guidance on AI that explains how some algorithms and AI can potentially lead to disability discrimination for hiring in areas such as job advertisements for targeted groups, deciding if an applicant meets job qualifications, holding online video interviews for applicants, using computer-based tests to measure an applicant's skills or abilities, and scoring applicants' resumes. So again, AI itself is not inherently bad or evil. It's just, it goes astray sometimes, and we really need to have that human interaction piece in order to make sure that the AI is doing what it needs to do. Next slide. So this is S3572. It's the Algorithmic Accountability Act of 2022. This is a bill that requires certain businesses that use automated decision systems to make critical decisions, to study and report about the impact of those systems on consumers. The Federal Trade Commission, also known as the FTC, in consultation with relevant stakeholders, must issue regulations to implement the bill. The bill provides for enforcement by the FTC and specified state officials. And the bill establishes a Bureau of Technology to advise the FTC about the technological aspects of its functions. Next slide. So this is an executive order from the White House. Again, it's linked on the very last, one of the last slides. It's really, really long, but this is a very high-level overview. And this just came out a few months ago, October 30th of 2023. Its purpose is artificial intelligence holds extraordinary potential for both promise and peril. Responsible AI use has the potential to help solve urgent challenges while making our world more prosperous, productive, innovative, and secure. At the same time, irresponsible use could exacerbate societal harms such as fraud, discrimination, bias, and disinformation, displace and disempower workers, and stifle competition. Could also pose risks to national security. So the government is taking this very, very seriously. Next slide. And this is the UN's report on governing AI for humanity. As the UN has rightly recognized in its interim report on governing AI for humanity, this technology cries out for governance, not merely to address the challenges and risks, but to ensure we harness its potential in ways that leave no one behind. And 3 areas that the UN focuses are capacity building and AI literacy, creation of a global risk taxonomy and repository, and harmonization of existing frameworks. So you can see with all these policies, governments and organizations are really trying to put some guardrails on AI because it's evolving so rapidly that the legal requirements for it are playing catch up very, very quickly. Next slide. So removing barriers to help ensure inclusion of people with disabilities. Next slide. This is an organization I have a great deal of respect for, PEAT, the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology. And what they've done is created an AI and disability inclusion toolkit. And this includes equitable AI in the workplace. This is free for anyone who wants to access these resources. risks of hiring tools, business case for equitable AI, an equitable AI playbook, and AI and disability inclusion resources. And again, this is linked in the latter pages of this presentation. Next slide. So providing people with disabilities a seat at the table. This, I can't overemphasize this enough, that with digital assets, with the inclusion of AI for people with disabilities, they need to be included at every stage of this process. It's critical that people who are designing the human-computer interactions that involve generative AI improve their knowledge of inclusive, human-centric design principles that take persons with disabilities into account. Disability is highly nuanced and diverse, and user research should be conducted with that in mind. And by working alongside and collecting feedback from individuals with various types of disabilities and who are neurodivergent, there is greater assurance of a more optimal, inclusive, and accessible experience for everyone. And then throughout the procurement process, it is the responsibility of organizations to effectively vet AI-related products in their procurement process to ensure more equitable experiences and opportunities for everyone. Next slide. And these are the resources that I've referred to in many of these slides that we've presented on today. Automated ableism, that's the research that was that I referred to. Algorithms, artificial intelligence, and disability discrimination in hiring. Guiding principles for AI, Algorithmic Accountability Act of 2022. Automated ableism and exploration of, oh, I'm sorry, this was a, oh no, this is a duplicate, my apologies. Biases in sentiment and toxicity analysis models. And then the full executive order by the White House, the link is there. And then the European United Nations report on governing AI for humanity. And then Pete, AI and Disability Inclusion Toolkit. And with that, I think we have a few minutes for questions. So Tori, are there any questions that came up that that John and I can address?
Yes, there is one question from Gary Morin, and he asks, do you have experience or testing of speech input, such as Dragon Naturally Speaking, to manage an AI tool, such as Copilot and ChatGPT? Basically, are they speech input friendly?
Oh, wow. I'll take a shot at this, and we have some TFL folks on this call as well who may be able to answer this better than I can. So with Dragon, it is very, very versatile. You can, it does a very good job of speech to text. So as long as it's programmatically accessible, in other words, if a person can tab to it or get to it via the keyboard rather than just pointing and clicking, it should be interactive with Dragon. And even if it isn't, this is a bit of a bandage approach, but Dragon also provides a grid, sort of a grid pattern on the screen so that a person can isolate a specific part of the screen and sort of manually provide that insertion point where it's needed. I haven't done any rigorous testing on that myself, but from what I know with Dragon Naturally Speaking and speech to text input, I think it should be fairly accessible. I'll say this though, and then I'll give John a chance to respond. If it's accessible via a screen reader, for example, JAWS, NVDA, VoiceOver, programmatically, it should be accessible for Dragon Naturally Speaking. So once you make it accessible for one assistive technology product or tool, generally that's going to transfer over to other keyboard or peripheral devices that that ride on top of that same technology. John, did you have anything to add?
Yes. So when I looked at the interface for ChatGPT, the input was not labeled, so it didn't have an accessible name. So that it's been a while since I've looked at it, so I didn't. Um, so it could have changed, but yeah. So the input wasn't correctly labeled, so it didn't have a name that was accessible to assistive technology, so that you could easily access it. But like Johan was saying, there are ways of using Dragon so that you can get into the input. And then once you're actually in the text input for ChatGPT, then Dragon's taking over from there. So it can at least input in some text. But with Copilot and ChatGPT and the mobile application for ChatGPT, those are actually fairly accessible, but that's because Apple iOS and at least the Google Play Store versions of the applications, they have stricter requirements around accessibility. So the iOS version was much more accessible as far as, especially with it was actually, I believe there is an integration with it with Siri. I don't know if that's still available for ChatGPT or not. I think it was in a beta phase for a while, but I don't know if it was ever fully released. But yeah, so if you're having trouble accessing one, you might try the app, but the apps are much more accessible than the website interface.
Yeah, and I see Gary, thank you for that feedback. He says, I have to disagree. And I think he wrote this while I was talking, so no reflection on you, John. I have to disagree. Many sites are not Dragon accessible just because their JAWS or NVDA works. That's a false paradigm or narrative, but thanks. So yeah, I think more rigorous testing needs to be done with various assistive technologies. From what I've seen, both on websites and documents, there is a great deal of overlap between programmatic accessibility for a screen reader and Dragon. But Gary, I'd love to hear your input on that, because you have a lot of experience on this, it sounds like. So if you don't mind, we would love to reach out to you and get additional information on that and some of the existing gaps with speech to text applications like Dragon.
Absolutely. He says, yes, I'd love to chat more.
Fantastic.
A couple more questions we had come in. We've still got about 6 minutes. Ashley Phillips asks, can I use AI to create a graphic that I can make accessible for a blind student? For example, if I need a map of Asia with certain countries, could I do that?
John, did you want to take a crack at that?
Definitely. I wouldn't rely on it to label the countries accurately. But yeah, there's a lot of things like that where you can create an image of that's a more technical looking image. But again, you want to sorry, trying to formulate the the best approach there, because you don't want to rely on it that it's 100% accurate. So you might have it draw a rough outline of what the countries look like related together, and then label them yourself. Or you might take an existing image. I think maybe what you might talk about making it accessible for a blind student is a description of the image once you're finished. So you can create the image and then use a text description tool or a image description tool to create text for the student who's blind. That would, and Personally, I kind of feel like that's where the future is with images especially on the web, as we'll start having tools built into things like screen reader, maybe even browsers that will just describe an image, and we'll have an ability to customize the description to your liking. So instead of it being everybody getting the same description, you'll get one that's tailored to either how you learn, maybe if it's a more technical image, or it might be, a more descriptive image if you prefer getting lots of detail about images. I know that's there's kind of a back and forth in the world of alternative text. How much description is too much and creates cognitive load, versus how much versus losing out on information that you might find important, even if the author doesn't think it's important. And having these tools will allow the person actually using them to tailor it to their liking.
Thanks, John. We've got another comment from Karen Milches, who is one of the researchers at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation with us. She says that there's another AI that can be used. She's been playing around with one called Goblin.Tools, that can scan a block of text and interpret the writer's, quote, tone or emotion.
Yes, I've actually been using that as well, or playing around with it as well. It's very it's sort of a study aid, but it's as well as it's got other tools like that you can interpret tone and emotion. I think it's mainly aimed towards the neurodiverse community who have trouble with stuff like that.
Okay, we've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. If there are any other questions. Okay, well, I think we will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I will be sending out a link to the recording, as well as a post-webinar survey. The survey you can expect later this afternoon. So please make sure you return that to us, because we want to get your feedback on this webinar, as well as what you would like to see in the future for other webinars. If there are no other questions, I believe that is it. Again, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.